Ha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Excellent. Uh, uh, hello, gamers. Let's see. Da-da-da. I need a break from editing. Uh, my brain is partially melted, as always. Uh, I need a drink. There we go. And I saw John FNAF, released a video. And in his immortal words, I think it's time for a banger. I think it's high time for a banger, which, given the title, the ultimate Midnight Motorist theory, I think we're due for a banger right here. So, without further ado, let's get to watching here.
Is someone there? Help! Okay, let's do this. Are you there?
Gregory? I got your message.
I have things to say. Stay for a second. Scott Cawthon. Midnight Motorist? We need to talk. Uh-oh. No, Scott. Wait. I've spent the last 2 years of my life dedicated to figuring out the biggest mystery in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, Midnight Motorist.
Best of
and
luck.
in this video, I'm gonna share everything that I found. This is by far the most comprehensive FNAF breakdown I've ever made. Let's get started. Midnight Motorist is one of 3 lore-heavy minigames in FNAF 6, with the other 2 being Fruity Maze and Charlie's Death minigame. FNAF 6 is the most lore-heavy game in the franchise, and that's on purpose. In the interview Dawko did with Scott Cawthon, Scott stated that FNAF 6 was made explicitly to answer questions regarding the story.
That was a game that was born out of necessity because I needed to kind of bring a conclusion to several events from the series.
This means that the most vague and mysterious minigame in all of FNAF came from a game that was supposed to tie up loose ends.
Ironic,
and as ironic as that is, it's also fascinating. It makes me wonder what Scott was thinking when he made this minigame. Did he intend for it to be this big mystery, or is he genuinely shocked that the community is still trying to figure it out? In a game that does answer a ton of questions regarding the story and gives a satisfying and epic conclusion to everything, Midnight Motorist is virtually the only thing in the game that feels unsolvable. And it's because of how random it is. The minigame takes place directly after Charlie's death. Afton pulls up to the pizzeria, kills Charlie, and speeds off. Midnight Motorist is showing us where he sped off to. We know this because the minigame is labeled later that night in the game files. The minigame shows Afton driving back home, but before he gets there, he passes a clearing in the woods containing a mound of dirt and a bar called Junior's that he was apparently kicked out of. You can even see the bouncer standing at the entrance who promptly tells Afton, "Come on, you know you can't be here, don't make this more difficult than it has to be." This is the part of the minigame that makes the most sense. Scott was giving us important context to Charlie's death by showing that Afton was under the influence when he killed her, possibly explaining why her death was so sloppy and spontaneous. Afton then eventually finds his way home, walks in the door, and is met with someone watching TV. The person says to Afton, "Leave him alone tonight, he had a rough day." Afton then goes to the bedroom only to find that it's locked. Quote, "I told you not to close your door. This is my house, he can't ignore me like that. I'll find a way in from the outside." He then goes outside to find that he escaped through the window, along with some animatronic footprints next to the bushes. Afton then says, "Ran off to that place again. He will be sorry when he gets back."
Not too drastic reaction, because we've all seen this a million times before.
There's a whopping 5 big questions left unanswered. Who is the person watching TV? Who is the runaway? What was buried in the middle of the woods? Where did the runaway run off to? And why are there animatronic footprints by the bushes? In order to answer these questions, we're gonna do something a little bit different. Let's look at this minigame from the perspective of the developer, starting with the person watching TV. When Scott made this part of the minigame, he likely started with this, a blank room with nothing in it. He then knew he wanted to add a specific character to the room, likely a member of the Afton family. Scott then decided to add 3 details to help us better understand who this is. He had the person sit and watch TV, wear a gray shirt, and talk with gray text. These are all traits that belong to Michael Afton. In FNAF 4, Michael wears a gray shirt, uses gray text, and in Sister Location is known for going home, sitting on a chair, and watching TV. The only 3 details we get about this character perfectly line up with Michael. But if this is Michael Afton, who is the boy who escaped out his bedroom window? Well, by process of elimination, it has to be the only boy left in the Afton family, the crying child. Need more proof? In FNAF 4, we learned that Michael Afton is in charge of babysitting the crying child, and in that game, we constantly see them home alone together, just like we see in Midnight Motorist. Also, one of the main things we learn—
I will pause real quick and say, and he might address this, but that sure is interesting to me, showing even younger Michael's character. If that is Michael, what are the lines that he says there, right? Like, leave him alone, he had a rough night. That doesn't sound like purely evil and vindictive. Which, I don't know. I wasn't really going anywhere with that. I just felt that that's interesting and worth pointing out that Michael wasn't, like, I guess, evil. Like, he was being a butthead, obviously, to his younger brother, but he cared about him enough to say, hey, leave him alone, he had a rough night.
About the crying child comes from one of the very first lines we get in FNAF 4. Quote, "What did he do this time? He locked you in your room again." Whenever Michael wasn't terrorizing his younger brother, he would constantly lock him in his room. And what do we see in Midnight Motorist? Michael and the crying child home alone, with Michael watching TV while the crying child is locked in his room, matching perfectly with everything we learned from FNAF 4. So far, we've answered 2 questions with some pretty solid evidence to back them up, but we still have 3 questions left, with the next one being a big one. What is the pile of dirt in the clearing? This random pile of dirt has driven me nuts for over 7 years now, and in my opinion, it is the biggest mystery in all of FNAF. Here's why. Unlike other parts of Midnight Motorist, there's literally nothing to connect this pile of dirt back to. The person sitting in the living room had specific traits that connected directly back to Michael Afton. The runaway has specific traits that connect it right to the crying child. This pile of dirt has nothing. Every time the pile of dirt is mentioned in official FNAF media, it's referred to as a secret grave. And I think the community has collectively agreed that that's what it is. Someone or something was buried here. And since we have basically nothing to go off of, let's once again look at this from the perspective of the developer. When Scott was making Midnight Motorist, he knew he wanted to add this grave. But instead of putting it in a cemetery or a hill by a tree like we see at the end of the game, he put it in the middle of the woods, clearly intending it to be hidden. The fact that the grave is so hidden and quote secret implies that whatever was buried here is part of some sort of crime, or at least something that someone wants to cover up. So in order to figure out whose grave this is, let's go through the list of crimes in this franchise. First, we have Charlie. Maybe after her death, Afton decided to cover it all up by burying her body in the middle of the woods. But we know that's not the case because we literally see Afton drive away after the murder, leaving her body outside in the rain.
And wait a minute, hang on. I want a chance to think this through before he says it, but if the grave was already there, even before Charlie's death, because again, he just left from there, he can't have, like, you know, like, the time that doesn't make sense, right? Like, the grave had to be there before Charlie even died. So, who could that be? Like, other than, like, the crying child is really the only one that dies before him. But, I mean, that wouldn't really make sense, because, I mean, that was an accident. That wasn't a murder. But I'm curious to see where he goes with this.
So we know it's not Charlie. Another popular theory in the community is that this is where the crying child was buried. But like we established earlier, the crying child is likely the runaway. So he would
and the
still
runaway
be
anyway.
At this point.
And he is.
So the crying child is also off the table.
And again, his death was an accident. It's not a murder. You wouldn't have to hide it in the first place.
I've heard some people say that this could be the grave of Mrs. Afton, but that feels
we don't
a little
know she's
too
alive. Well, in fact, I've argued with my theories she is alive if we look at the security breach era closely.
only is there no mention of Mrs. Afton dying in this franchise, there's only one vague mention of her existence at all. In the TV show Immortal and the Restless from
Well, and again, the whole issue of, like, again, unless Afton reproduces by budding, you know, the kids had to come from somewhere.
Sister Location, we do seem to get a parallel to Mr. and Mrs. Afton in Vlad and Clara, but that's literally it. Mrs. Afton isn't very satisfying and doesn't have much to back it up, so she's out of the running. Next up, we have Elizabeth. I actually really like the idea of it being Elizabeth's grave, because her death was a freak accident entirely caused by William.
Yeah, but the timeline doesn't line up.
Not only that, we know that Afton actively tried covering it up. When Elizabeth died and Circus Babies closed, Afton hid the truth from the public by saying that the restaurant closed down due to gas leaks. So it would totally make sense that Afton would want to hide her body. But in order for this to work, Elizabeth would had to have died before Charlie and
that's the big
crime
problem with
child.
me anyway.
And I just don't see Afton creating animatronics specifically built to capture kids that early.
To capture kids, to test and harvest Remnant and study Remnant before he even knew what Remnant was and would have a motive to try and harvest and study Remnant in the first place.
In the timeline. So although I do like it and it could make sense if we get more information, I don't think this grave belongs to Elizabeth.
Nope.
So if you haven't noticed yet, we are quickly running out of dead people. And at this point, I was about to give up. Every answer I could come up with felt unsatisfying because there was no evidence to back it up. So before I gave up, I decided to try one last thing. Actually play the game. But this time, I would really analyze it from the developer's point of view, like we've been doing this whole video. And it was during this one playthrough that I discovered the theory that I'm gonna share with you today. In FNAF 6, there are 3 lore-heavy minigames: Fruity Maze, Midnight Motorist, and Charlie's Death minigame.
Yep.
The first thing I noticed was in order to get the lore keeper ending of the game, you need to complete all 3 of these minigames. This is interesting because there are other things you can buy in FNAF 6 that feature lore, such as Candy Cadet and Egg Baby, but those ones aren't required to get the lore keeper ending. Scott purposely paired these 3 minigames together. Why? Well, we know that the security puppet minigame and Midnight Motorist are directly connected.
Yes.
Midnight Motorist literally takes place directly after Charlie's Death minigame. The minigames are so connected, in fact, that I started asking myself the question, why does Fruity Maze even exist? That may sound odd, but really think about it. The security puppet minigame revealed that Charlie possesses the puppet and gave us more info on how that happened. Midnight Motorist revealed important context behind Charlie's death, showcasing that Afton was under the influence when it happened. It also showed us exactly where he sped off to. Candy Cadet told us the story of 5 things becoming one thing, explaining how all of the spirits ended up in Molten Freddy. Egg Baby gave us Henry's insanity ending speech, which is arguably the biggest lore drop in the entire franchise. All of this stuff is super important to understanding the lore of these games and the franchise as a whole. And then there's Fruity Maze. Fruity Maze tells us the story of how Susie, the kid who goes on to possess Chica, was lured into the back room by Afton, and that's it. This minigame feels odd because it's not required to understand anything. We already knew that Afton lured the kids into the back room, and Scott even reveals Susie's name at the end of the game. The only purpose of the minigame is to show the specifics of how Afton lured Susie into the back room. So that again begs the question, what is the purpose of this minigame? Well, like I said earlier, Scott purposely paired this minigame with Midnight Motorist and Charlie's Death. And just like how Midnight Motorist gives added context to Charlie's Death minigame, I think Fruity Maze gives added context to Midnight Motorist. I actually think all 3 of the minigames are connected to each other. In Fruity Maze, we learn exactly how Afton lured Susie into the back room. It's revealed that Susie's dog had died, and Afton told her, quote, "He's not really dead. He's over here. Follow me." What if I told you that it's not a human buried in the woods in Midnight Motorist, it's Susie's dog? Let me explain. The more you play the Fruity Maze minigame, the more it starts to break. First, you see a bunch of fruit scattered throughout the maze. Then you start to see Susie's dog alongside the fruit. And in the final phase of the minigame, the fruit is gone, and we see 3 things: Susie's dog, a mini coffin, and flowers. The music in the minigame then cuts out, and you start hearing a car alarm. After the car alarm, you then see Afton show up behind her. The car alarm indicates that Susie's dog was hit by a car, and the coffin and flowers indicate that the dog was buried somewhere. The fact that Afton knows that her dog died match with the eerie car alarm playing before Afton shows up tells me that Afton had something to do with her dog's death. The absolute nail in the coffin for this comes from the final detail we see in this minigame. Randomly scattered throughout the final phase of the minigame among the dead dog, coffin, and flowers is a yellow rabbit digging a hole in the dirt. Scott added a sprite of a yellow rabbit, aka William Afton, that dug a hole in the ground. And in Midnight Motorist, we see something down the road from Afton's house buried in the dirt in a clearing right next to the road. Why did Scott show us the story of how Afton lured this one specific kid? Well, it's because it gives us important context for Midnight Motorist, therefore connecting all three of these minigames as part of the Lore Keeper ending. In all of the FNAF games, this is the only time we've seen anything relating to Afton burying something in the dirt, and it comes from a minigame that was intentionally paired with Midnight Motorist. So now the question becomes, why? Why create this storyline about Susie's dog and then immediately show us where it was buried in the very next minigame? Well, the answer is he did it to establish a timeline. By showing us what happens directly after Charlie gets killed, we're able to see which characters are still alive. In Midnight Motorist, we see that Michael and the Crying Child are still alive directly after Charlie was killed, which means that the Crying Child must die after Charlie. The inclusion of the dirt mound, though, throws a whole new wrench into the timeline. If this mound of dirt was put there to imply that Susie's dog was already dead and buried before Charlie died, that would mean that the missing children's incident likely happened before Charlie and the Crying Child's death.
Or not very long after at all. It could, like, even if it's just a couple days, right? Afton could have just said, like, oh, hey, your dog's missing, you know, I heard about that, but he's not really dead, you know, like, I know where he is, come with me, right? Like, if she's still grieving, you know, within the next couple days, that could work too, was my thought.
Effectively making it the first major event in the timeline. This goes against pretty much every interpretation of the timeline I've ever seen. But for fun, I decided to keep going and see if there's actually evidence to back it up. Could the missing children's incident really be the first event in the timeline? Well, the first thing I thought of was the FNAF 4 minigames. In those minigames, we see the Crying Child walk up to a little girl who says, quote, "You'd better watch out, I hear they come to life at night. And if you die, they hide your body and never tell anyone. This is odd."
Hang on. Let me hear that again.
See the Crying Child walk up to a little girl who says, quote, "You'd better watch out, I hear they come to life at night. And if you die, they hide your body and never tell."
That is a weird line. Okay.
Anyone. This is odd because the commonly believed year of the missing children's incident is...
Yeah, and I just want to say real quick before he continues the video, like, it doesn't really make sense for the MCI to happen first, because the whole motive for William to kill all the kids in the first place was to continue to gather and study and harvest remnant, right? Like, if the Crying Child, if, like, he has no motive for that, i.e. the Crying Child, which has to happen first for him to have the motive to kill the MCI in the first place, right? Like, so if the Crying Child isn't first, like, it kind of breaks everything, because, like, that is the kind of original thing that spurned all this, but I'll see where he goes with it.
1985, and we know that if you die, they hide your body and never tell anyone. This is odd because the commonly believed year of the missing children's incident is 1985, and we know that this minigame takes place in 1983. That means that the rumors of kids being stuffed into animatronics existed in 1983, before the Crying Child was even dead yet, which would line up with the missing children's incident being the first event in the timeline. While replaying FNAF 6, I also noticed a weird detail about the Charlie death minigame. One thing about Scott...
And it wouldn't make sense lore-wise, though.
Scott's 8-bit minigames is that they have little to no details. So much so that we...
As far as, like, William's motive and, like, what like the whole base core story as far as we know. But again, I'll stop pausing.
We don't even know which pizzeria this minigame takes place in. Scott really only adds details that are required to understand the basics of what's going on. So when we get to the part of the minigame where we go outside, you can see that Scott added rain and garbage cans to show that we're on the side of the building. But one other thing he decided to add were posters taped to the walls. This is a common thing you'd see on the side of a building, but what's interesting is the type of poster it is. Scattered on the walls outside of the pizzeria are wanted posters. In a minigame that has little to no detail, Scott took the time to make a wanted poster featuring the outline of a man wearing a hat. Not only that, he scattered the same poster all over the walls.
I mean, it could
a popular
be
trope in
a
movies
wanted
and TV
poster,
shows
but
is to hang a comical amount of wanted posters of the same person all over the place. It's a way to emphasize how important it is for
there's
this
not a lot
person
of
to be
detail to
caught.
that
And
image.
it seems that Scott did the same thing here. By putting a bunch of wanted posters outside of a Freddy's restaurant, it's almost like Scott was trying to show us that a criminal
or it could just be a Fazbear or Fredbear poster, like we know does exist, seen in the later games, and even the Secret of the Mimic trailer. Just pointing that out.
having something to do with Freddy's was on the loose when Charlie was killed. And I think that criminal could be William Afton. If Midnight Motorist really is showing us that the MCI happened first, these wanted posters would be a great way to show us through environmental storytelling that William Afton already was a wanted criminal before Charlie got killed. And one of the strongest pieces of evidence for this actually comes from one voice line in Ultimate Custom Night.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
I always just interpreted that to mean that she was the first of the MCI.
Chica says, "I was the first. I have seen everything." This voice line blows my mind because in a series where Scott has stated that he likes to clear up misconceptions from past games in future games, he decided to add a voice line in the very last FNAF game he ever made that says, "I was the first. I have seen everything." This heavily implies that Susie was the first murder in the franchise, which would make sense if the MCI happened first. Another piece of evidence comes from Help Wanted 2, where we see 6 graves for Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Golden Freddy, and the puppet. But there's a specific order that we need to light them in. That order has Chica first, Foxy, Bonnie, Freddy, Golden Freddy, and then the puppet. This matches perfectly with everything we've discussed so far. Chica was the first, she's seen everything, followed by the—
It could, again, just be the order they moved on, as people have also said for years, but we'll keep going.
The rest of the MCI, and then Charlie. All of this stuff shows that there is evidence to back up this timeline of events, which means that this very well could be where Susie's dog was buried. So that's 3 of the 5
I
questions.
will say I do like that part of it, that is Susie's dog. It's just all of these issues are solved by just saying, oh, this happened a couple days later. Like, it's totally possible for William to have killed her dog, and then the MCI happens, like, in the next couple days after Charlie's death. Although, granted, God, like, that's still kind of... There's a wrench in it, too, because I thought, the crying child's death has to be first among everything. Otherwise, again, like, what kind of spurns Afton to, start killing in the first place? Like, that's how I always understood this story, was that the very first death was an accident, not a murder. But we'll keep going here
with a pretty satisfying answer to back it up. But now we get to the actual hardest questions to answer in this minigame. Where did the crying child run off to? And why are there animatronic footprints by the bushes? Unlike the pile of dirt in the clearing, we actually have dialogue we can analyze that's related to the scene. When William Afton comes home to see that his son escaped out his bedroom window, he says, quote, "ran off to that place again. He will be sorry when he gets back." The most important part of this dialogue is the word "again." ran off to that place again implies that this is a pattern of behavior. Afton also
Yes.
immediately knows where he ran off to. This
Yes.
isn't the first time the crying child has done this.
Correct.
That then begs the question, where is he running off to? One possible option comes from the Twisted Ones, which released 6 months before FNAF 6. In the book, Charlie gets kidnapped by one of the Twisted animatronics, and her friends are desperately trying to find her. While her friends are looking for her, Shadow Freddy appears in the woods, and her friend says, quote, "I don't know what it is, but I think it wants us to follow." Shadow Freddy then lures them directly to Charlie. What Shadow Freddy is and why it did this is never explained in the book, but what if it helps explain Midnight Motorist? What if, just like in the book, Shadow Freddy appeared outside of the crying child's window and lured him to Charlie? In FNAF 4, we're told repeatedly that the reason the crying child is scared of the pizzeria is because he saw something. So what if the thing that he saw was Charlie getting killed outside of the pizzeria?
Yeah, because that was always a pickle of, why is he sad and weepy in the first place? Although, again, that could have just been him, what is it? Blah, 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 blah. The other line, what is it? Things in the shadows easily misunderstood in the eyes of a child. He could have just been seeing nothing, and was just started to be afraid of Freddy's, just on his own as a young kid. Doesn't have to be that he saw the murder happen first, but again, we'll roll with it.
This theory is pretty popular in the community and is similar to ID's Fantasy's take on Midnight Motorist. Every time we see the crying child in FNAF 4, he is terrified of Fredbears. But Midnight Motorist showed us that that wasn't always the case. It turns out that the crying child used to run off to that place all the time. He loved going there until he saw Charlie get killed outside of the pizzeria.
Hang on.
It turns out that the crying child used to run off to that place all the time. He loved going there.
Could have been just from his brother starting to bully him there. Could have just, again, started to get afraid on his own of the restaurant or misunderstood what he saw there. And just naturally stopped, but sure.
Until he saw Charlie get killed outside of the pizzeria. I really like this explanation, and it's because it gives a solid reason for why Scott set Midnight Motorist on the same night as Charlie's death. The reason he showed us that the crying child ran off to the pizzeria the same night Charlie was killed was to connect those two events. Midnight Motorist showed us that the crying child wasn't always scared of the pizzeria, while also showing us the night that all changed. Also, Shadow Freddy luring the crying child to Charlie not only matches up with the Twisted Ones, but also FNAF 3, where we see Shadow Freddy luring the animatronics in the Follow Me minigames. This is a great explanation and is super satisfying, but I do have a few problems with it. In FNAF 4, when the crying child is left alone at Fredbear's, he's told to run towards the exit. But if you try to go further into the pizzeria, you hear, quote, "No, don't you remember what you saw? The exit is the other way. Hurry and leave." This implies that what the crying child saw was further inside of the pizzeria. The crying child wouldn't want to go outside if what he saw was Charlie being killed outside. Also, 2 months after FNAF 4 came out, Scott gave us 3 clues to help figure out the game.
Here it is. Exactly what I talked about. What is seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. That doesn't, none of this means like he had to see something bad happen at Freddy's beforehand to be scared of it, right? Which is what I still think, at the moment at least.
of them being what is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. This is Scott outright telling us that the crying child didn't actually see anything bad happen, he misunderstood what he saw. There's a reason that after we get the line, "Don't you remember what you saw?" we see this Easter egg, an employee in the shadows of the back room putting on a Bonnie suit. The crying child saw this and thought someone was being stuffed into a suit. This is why he wants to leave the pizzeria and is scared of the animatronics. When confronted with one, he's told, quote, "It's too late. Hurry the other way and find someone who will help. You know what will happen if he catches you." That he is clearly referring to the Fredbear mascot that just appeared in front of him. So although I love the theory of Crying Child being lured by Shadow Freddy and witnessing Charlie's death, it's not perfect. Speaking of things not being perfect, this whole theory isn't perfect. Susie's dog being buried in the clearing and the MCI being the first event in the franchise has evidence to back it up. But time and time again, in the Silver Eyes trilogy, Fazbear Fright...
Again, I kind of like the Susie's dog thing. Again, this whole theory would be salvaged by just saying, like, John, like, why does it have to be before? Like, is there nothing stopping this from working by just saying Afton killed the dog, and then the MCI happens a couple days later, which would be weird, right? I've always implied that, or thought that there's a bit of a time gap between, what is it, the crying child's death, Charlie's death, and then the MCI, that there were gaps in between all of those, but it would at least work if you said, okay, Charlie dies, and then the MCI happens within the next couple days. Now, granted, that wouldn't explain the crying child, but it would work better. But let's see.
And the Into the Pit game, Scott has established that the MCI happened in 1985, making it impossible for it to be the first event in the timeline. You could argue that those books and the Into the Pit game take place in a different continuity, but with how many times Scott has stuck with that year, I doubt he would change it for the main games. And with that, the entire theory falls apart. But that's kind of the point of this video. I wanted to show you the process of what it's like to theorize about this minigame. From getting excited about finally finding some solid answers with solid evidence to back them up, to finding
only
the
have
one
it
or two
crumble.
things that make it all fall
and it's
apart.
just I do sympathize with that. It's like, and you just go down the trail and one thing leads to another, and then it's just one random detail comes in and like a Jenga tower topples the whole thing. That is massively frustrating. I get it.
Theory I shared with you today does contain my best guesses.
Although I will say, like, going back to here,
it all fall apart.
Pull it up
the theory
again. Looking at these, right, there's elements I agree with. Like, I do think that that's probably Michael. What is it? I like the Susie's dog thing, but it wouldn't totally explain it. It kind of still makes the timeline wonky just because the crying child's still alive. And, like, the whole plot of the general story doesn't really work unless the crying child dies first. Because that's kind of what made Afton upset in the first place. You know, but we'll see.
Shared with you today does contain my best guesses for what this minigame was trying to show us. But at the same time, I don't believe all of it. I love the idea of Susie's dog being buried in the clearing. I even decided to look this up to see if anyone's thought of this before, and it turns out a couple people have. But in order for this to work, the MCI can't happen in 1985, and I believe it does. I also don't think the graves in Help Wanted 2 are showing us a death order. I think they're probably showing us the order the spirits moved on. In the Happiest Day minigame, you can see the MCI victims' masks drop first, with Charlie's then dropping last. Matching with the grave order. The thing is, it feels like Scott's been trying to give us answers for this minigame for years now. There's multiple stories in Fazbear Frights about a kid being lured out of their house by an animatronic and taken to Freddy's. We also recently got the Midnight Motorist level in 5 Laps at Freddy's, which confirmed Afton is the Orange Man. And finally, we have the FNAF movie, where Scott literally showed us a version of Midnight Midnight Motorist playing out in real time. During the night, Golden Freddy shows up to Abby's house where we see someone sitting in a chair watching TV and Abby in her room. Golden Freddy then sneaks Abby out of her house and takes her to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And the funny thing is that this could also work in the games. Just like Abby, the crying child is also being taken care of by his older brother Mike. The crying child also has a close relationship with his plushies, just like Abby. Abby calls the animatronics her friends in the movie. The crying child calls his Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy plushies his friends in the games. The crying child could easily be friends with the animatronics. And Midnight Motorist could be Golden Freddy sneaking the crying child out of his house at night to go hang out at the pizzeria, just like in the movie. But like we established earlier, this would only make sense if the MCI happened first, which seems unlikely. Midnight Motorist is one of the biggest mysteries in all of FNAF because of its extreme lack of detail and lack of things to connect it back to. And this could very well be on purpose. In the recent interview Dawko did with Scott, he talked about how he makes his games.
You know, whenever I'm making these games, there are a lot of things that are in my head that are
just flowing ideas. Yep. And talked about this in my theories.
Put them there.
It's the first half of something.
It's like a string
or rope connecting
like reaching out, and I know that what's there on the other end is
there's something there.
I trust that it's there. I know that it's there. And then whenever I progress forward, the rest of it just
is brought into the light.
The rest of it appears and just fits into place perfectly. That's all my games have been made. I feel that there is something there, and I make the road
to get there
for that to be revealed.
Scott loves foreshadowing and laying the groundwork for something to be explained later. So Midnight Motorist could be Scott giving us the first half of something with the rest being revealed later on.
Which, again, would still be weird if FNAF 6 was supposed to be the game where we're closing up all these loose ends and we're tying everything up in a nice little bow to... I mean, unless it was like he already knew he was going to hand it off to Steelwool and, like, leave this for them to explain, but... I don't know, that's not... that's kind of counterintuitive. But, I mean, you know... It really depends on what he was intending, I guess.
Who knows? This minigame is a great representation of FNAF as a whole. There are so many ways you can make everything work, but you can't achieve that without filling in some big gaps in the story yourself. At least for now. Subscribe if you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.
I'd say that was very good. I don't agree with it, and it sounded like, even he didn't in the end. So I'm glad I kind of stuck to my guns there, but, what is it? I liked that theory. I don't agree with it, but, these are just, I gave my honest, opinion as I was, watching it. Oh, hey, we had a couple people in here. Let me pull up... Hey, everybody. Wow, I didn't expect other people to be watching this. I'll pull up the chat on this so I can kind of tag along. And I guess I'll do a post-video, chat through here. Oh, wow, like, hey, everybody, wow. There we go. Let's see, what did everybody have to say? Oh, wow, I'll have to read through all this later. Hey, everybody, hey, Blue Star, Green Moon, hey, Chatterbaiter. What is it? So, yeah, I guess I'll do a quick, post video debrief here and see what you guys were saying. How could the MCI happen after if CC was led away by Shadow Freddy and Golden Freddy? Yeah, pretty much like we said, yeah. Or wait a minute, if CC is led away by Shadow Freddy and Golden Freddy. And again, I guess that assumes that it's Shadow Freddy and Golden Freddy as well. Hey, I've got some insider in the second film if you want to know. Sure, by all means, I suppose. Be careful with leaks, is what I guess I would say. If you guys have any questions as well, feel free to drop them in. Um, what is it? I can't see that, however. FNAF 4's minigame screen definitely happened in 1983. Not necessarily if and like in the video, there's been too many things that seem to imply the MCI happens in 1985. Yes, I agree. Because the thing to me that I always am kind of basing all this on is the crying child's death. Not just lore-wise, but like as far as the story goes, right? Seems to make the most sense that it has to happen first. Hey, a crazy rabbit. Um, what is it? Like, because if the crying child's death doesn't happen first, what is the onus for William to kill Charlie in the first place? Or even do the MCI if, like John was theorizing here, if that actually happened first? Well, what was the motive for that to happen then, right? Like, he just randomly, like, after all these years started to, decided to start killing? Like, that doesn't feel satisfying or make much sense. The whole linchpin of, like, starting these events is the death of the crying child. It's kind of hard, and as John, showed in his own video, it's kind of hard to move these, like, fixed linchpin events with the timeline in that we are pretty darn sure that the MCI happens in 1985, right? We can all agree on that, and like am I right in saying that that seems to be where we're all on the same page with? I think the bite of '83 happened and BV survived. I might just be brain farting, but remind me who is BV? What is it? What if he's just crazy? He is a FNAF theorist. I think we've all got a bit of a screw loose. I completely forgot to mention in DMs and talking with you and making a series of solve FNAF's biggest story, while also introducing a new story. Oh, okay. I might have to check that out. What is it? My brain has just been melting working on my next video, so I saw John upload it, and I was like, ooh, I'll watch it real quick, give my thoughts, and do a post video chat. Though I think he was in a coma for a while, and that's when William did the MCI. BV the crying child, okay. So you think the crying child was in a coma for a while, and that's when William did the MCI. That very well could have happened, because it was said like he was like on life support for a while, and he could have just died after. No, I mean, what if William's just crazy? He made a whole remnant extractor. Well, again, like the whole like William just being crazy out of nowhere, and then at that point it's just like, oh, why wasn't William killing people years ago, right? Like this whole thing was started because of, like, again, his rage at Henry, and to a lesser degree his own son Michael, over the death of the crying child, and that's why he started these experiments. Now, granted, this part is my interpretation, but I think this is when he started to begin these early experiments into Remnant, and trying to just really understand what this is. And I don't think, and I thought for years, right, that, along with others, that him seeing the security puppet be possessed by Charlie is the thing for him to connect those dots and be like, oh, maybe there is something behind all this, spirit stuff. I need to look into this and do this more and study this more, right? But now I will say with Secret of the Mimic, I'm starting to kind of think, like, what if Dave was the first one to do that with him, and him be like, maybe, like, possession is actually a thing. Let's see. New lore draw. There's a new substance, kind of like agony. Oh god, another discount Phasgu. It's a FNAF VHS series. To not give a lot away, it'll be focused mainly in the 80s, and then after FNAF 6, it will be around the marionette and a new character, the one that I said I created. I will have to check that out. What is it? After I hop off stream, I'll try to sub to your channel so I can catch that when it drops. There's a flatline, huh? Also, I'd like to bring up the idea of Charlie 87. There's some evidence that MM happens in 87, mainly with FNAF having the MM car have 87 on the dice. Let me make sure I read that right. Also make analog horror. Neat. I have to check that out. We have the idea of Charlie 87. What, that Charlie died in 87? I don't know if I missed you mentioning it, but there's a video by Fazbear Entertainment that goes over Charlie 87, and it's fairly convincing. What, that Charlie died in 87? Because again, excuse me, because I don't really think that would work either if the MCI is in 1985. How does it make sense for Charlie to die in 87? If she is the second one to die after the first, which is the crying child. Like, and I don't mean to sound like so rigid about that, but as like getting into this whole FNAF theorist game, the studying I have done to try and like figure out what this darn timeline is crying child is first, then what is it, Charlie Emily, then the MCI is the order I have understood this to go. Now, there might also be a DCI, right, with FNAF 2, but that's its own thing. We'll put that to the side. But, like, the main events, Crying Child, Charlie, MCI, is what I understand it, and I think most of the community seems to think happens. I think the stream went wonky again. Uh-oh. Here we're going to this. Oh, yeah, and I've kind of got a screenception here. Here we'll pop it back to this, and we'll pull up. Yeah, that. Maybe that'll clear it a bit. There we go. Bear with me if you couldn't tell. I'm also getting used to streaming. And I'll just put you to the side. There we go, in a whole separate window. And we'll do it like that. Boop boop. There we go. Now we're cooking with portals. There we go. So now I can see the chat. There we go. Okay, there we go. Fixed. Perfect. The way the FNAF 2 movie animatronics work is there's no souls possessing them. Yeah, in the movie, yeah, that is the case. I'm just saying I'm aware of the DCI. I haven't fully formed my opinion on whether or not I think there was a dead kids incident. I see evidence either way, but the core events are that we, as well as we can guarantee anything in FNAF, is Crying Child dies first, then Charlie, then MCI, and there may be a DCI after that. But, you know, those core three events have to happen, and as far as I understand the lore, and most of the, Theor's community seems to tackle the lore, it seems to take place in that order as well. But after seeing the Charlie 87 video and FNAF videos, I think the death order may really be CC Comatose after the 83 bite, MCI Charlie, and then he dies later. Okay. Hang on, I need to think about that one. And I would need to see that video. So you think Crying Child gets bit, goes comatose, MCI happens next, then Charlie, then the Crying Child dies later? I know, it's very, very weird, I'll admit. Yeah, that is a new one. Hello, Fazbear and friends. And Chattery said, I mean, people were killed at the end of the FNAF 2 game. William put the bodies on display. Yes. From what we understand, that seems to be what happened. But again, I'm not fully sold either way on the DCI, whether it happened or not. That is a debate in the fandom, and I'm not so versed in that part of the timeline specifically to be able to say whether I believe it one way or the other. I think it's unlikely because of the flat line in FNAF 4. Flatline, yeah, and the whole and that's when we get the whole "I will put you back together" speech and the Fredbear plush and yes, that would make it rough. Peace, I'm going to bed. It's 2:01 where I live. Yeah, get some sleep. I'm kind of mountain time here, so I'm a little more west. But yeah, no. That's what I think of the evidence is pointing to. I will have to look more into that, Blue Star. What is it, Charlie 87, and FNAF's video. Are you meaning this video here, or is there another one I would have to see? Because that is a really, really, really wonky death order of, what is it again? Crying Child gets bit, MCI happens, then Charlie, and then Crying Child dies later. Like, ugh, that is so weird. God, that would be so annoying to try and figure that out afterwards. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not possible. It's just, God, that would be annoying. What is it? That'd be fair toy. It's mainly MM's implication of being an 87. That's making me consider BV survived. Yeah, this was the FNAF video. Okay. So yeah, I will see that Charlie 87 video because you got me curious a bit. So I'll probably check that out tomorrow. But as well, I kind of need my brain to kind of decompress after today because I've been doing a lot of work on my next theory video. Charlie 87 is a YouTuber called Fazbear Entertainment. I will have to check that out. And hey, easy to remember name. But I've been working on my next theory video. My brain is melted. I have spent literally, God, like 4 hours just working on a yeah, and I've already made the post on my channel about it, but I'm working on my puppet video, specifically the Nightmare plushes in the Security Breach era. One of my early subscribers wanted me to do a video on that, and that's what I'm doing next. And what I thought was, and I made a post about it earlier today, what I thought was going to be like a 10-minute video is quickly turning into my longest yet, so it's just, no. Well, because, like, you know, you flip over one stone and one thing leads to another, and to explain it, you know, to a way that would make any sense, you know, I've got to explain all these other things, and it's just, it gets to the point where it's, even I'm like, oh wait, like what actually is happening here, right? You can go ahead and rest, man. Sounds like a busy day. Yeah, no. I will get some rest. But here in a minute, unless you guys had any other quick questions. But yeah, I spent like 2 hours just on this. Like, if you've ever seen like a conspiracy board thing, um, uh, yeah, seen like a conspiracy board thing. Well, uh, there we go. Um, watching a movie or something, and like the crazy guy is making all these things connect. I've literally made an image I'll show in the video. Trying my best to explain the Nightmare because I really, really tried hard to figure out what the Nightmare is and the Nightmare plushies in the Security Breach era specifically. Which actually, let me ask that to you guys as a last, final question. If you guys didn't really have anything, chatters, I'll toss it to you. What do you think the Nightmare plush is in the Security Breach era? Like, what is it? Why do we see it pop up in places it shouldn't be able to? In both Security Breach, Ruin, and I believe Help Wanted 2. Why does it keep coming back? Why does this evil nightmare version of Charlie, basically, why does it keep coming back in the modern era of FNAF? Like, why? Now, I think I could barrage you with possible ideas, but I think it's better for some other time. That's fair. But, just letting you know, like, what I've been having to work through to try and answer that question in this next video. Chatter says it's a reminder. And, I mean, yeah, I do think it is. It's like this figure of agony. It places itself places. You're on the right track to where I'm going with my theory, because I think I've answered it, finally. You're on the right track, I'll say, chatter. I think you might like my next video then. On looking into it, I think there's a connection to the Blob, mainly because there's a supernatural and sci-fi element to it. You're getting warmer. You're getting warmer. Charlie's Agony. I think we have a winner, Toy Bond Boy. You pretty much hit the nail on the head, and I don't want to give too much of my next video away, but I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like in Ruin, the plushies seem to be in areas where something almost seems to be trying to kill Cassie. Or just places that it would be impossible for, like, a physical person or animatronic even to, like, put the plushie there. Like, I know there's some where it's, like, tucked way behind stuff or, like, up super high. Or even in Ruin, in way under, in, like, I think it's even below the FNAF 6 location, right before you get to the elevator. Like, back behind those boxes, there's a Nightmare plush. Like, so there's no way, and it would be even behind the concrete doors, so, like, there's no way that would have been Vanny putting that there, right? Like, how do you explain that? How did a Nightmare plush end up all the way down there, right? And I'll have a fun time trying to explain that in this video. And in the scene when the card almost kills her, there's a Nightmare staff bot driving around in the digital world. Really? That is interesting. God, I might need to force myself to play Ruin. Like, God, I know I'm gonna have to play Security Breach and Ruin and all of them, but it's just, God, I need to wait to see if I can find a CD key, because, God, it's like $40 on Steam. Hey, I sent you a request on Discord. I've got some stuff about the second movie I think you'd like. Yeah, sure. I'll hop on Discord either tonight or tomorrow, and I'll add you, and you can send whatever. There's also in Help Wanted 2 showing staff bots turning into Nightmare staff bots. Really? Like the act of turning into them? I might have missed that in Help Wanted 2. Um, but yeah, no. Thank you guys for watching. Tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the little teaser I gave for the next video. Or the even more difficult question to me is, what is Nightmarion? Well, and that's what I talked about earlier, right? Like flipping over stones, right? Like I can't really explain the Nightmarion plushie in the modern day FNAF if I don't explain what the Nightmarion is, right? And that's why my video is probably going to be like half an hour long by the end of it, to get you excited, Toy Bon Boy. I will say, like, I am going to cover that question. What is Nightmarion? In the Fuzzy Fast Staff Bot Management minigame, if you're too slow, they physically corrupt in front of you. Oh, yeah, I remember that now. And there's a correction with dreams, too. Yeah, like, because I remember even the, the Nightmarion staff. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, there we go. I think chat hiccuped. And I was just saying, it's one thing to explain the Nightmarion itself. It's another thing entirely to explain why do the staff bots look like Nightmarion and have in your dreams written on them. That is so annoying for my next theory. I am gonna explain it, but God, it is annoying, and I'm not even fully sure yet. There's a connection with dreams too, mainly with the Endo daycare. With one room behind the bed, you can get a Nightmarion plushie from a gift box. Yeah. You know, so showing that they're also like a physical thing you can find in the real world, which is also massively annoying to try to explain. So there might have something to do with Moon. Yeah, the vague connection with the daycare, possibly. But the part I find more annoying is the implication that because, what is that? That's in security breach, right? And that showing that, the Nightmarion plushies are indeed physical. If, Gregory is able to pick it up from the gift box. That's massively annoying. That it's apparently a object in the real world. That is massively, massively annoying. But yeah, I think I will end it there, guys. What is it? Yeah, I think I will end it there. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll have to scroll through chat later and see if I missed anything, which whoopsie. And hey, I've got my Discord in my channel description if you guys want to ask anything to me directly. But yeah, I gave a teaser for my next video. I'm still working on it. Hopefully the next couple days I'll drop it, fingers crossed. You all have a good night, and thank you for tuning in. Have a good night, and bye.